So let's talk about Brenda, if we could, for a second. What kind of person was Brenda?
Brenda was the sweetest child, always respectful. The story I always said about them when they were kids was the only time that she was ever the one in trouble was if she got between me and my son when I was trying to get to him. And it was just, she just was always a good child. Very gentle, very loving. You really never heard a raised voice or anything from her. She dedicated her life after college to advocating for children at Akron Children's Hospital on the oncology hematology floor. And I was amazed that she was able to stay on that same floor for so many years, because it's such a difficult thing when children are ill and when children die. And she did. She stayed all those years with it. Many Christmas Eves that she would call and say, "Mom, I'm just going to have to go back to the hospital because some of the children don't have family coming in and I want to be there for them." So she did. She always was with us on Christmas Day, but she sometimes didn't make it for Christmas Eve. But she was, I'm sorry, am I taking
It's okay. No,
she was always the organizer and the family gatherer, and Bob and I went to Disney World with them, and she made all the plans, and she would call me to ask me, "Is this okay and is that okay?" And I said, "Brenda, just give me the dollar amount at the end and I'm happy." So she planned everything, and it was wonderful because we would have never planned a trip like that on our own. So yes, that was my daughter.
Okay, thank you. What kind of mom was she?
She was a wonderful mom. She worried about her kids all the time. And probably one of the reasons she waited a little longer than some to have children is because of what she had seen in the hospital. But we were just thrilled when they announced that they were pregnant. And from day one, she just was wonderful with the kids. Both of them. Steve was wonderful with them too as they got older and played out in the yard and so forth. He was always we had a lot of picnics at our place on the weekends, and the two of them were outside with the kids all the time. Or sitting on the swing. I have a vision in my mind of the two of them I've got a bench swing that my husband built, and the two of them are sitting on the swing, but they're both sitting in the middle, side by side. There was room for other people on both ends. They didn't have to squeeze in, but they did. That was their natural state.
Yeah, say a little more, if you could, about the relationship that you saw between Brenda and Sydney. What was that like?
Well, that's what I say. She was just they were always side by side. She was very proud of her. She went to all of her soccer games, all of them. I offered to buy her one of those little huts that are see-through, so in the cold weather she could sit in it. She says, "Mom, I'm not going to sit in that." But anyways, we went to some of the games that were closer to us that we could go see. But she just loved to do that. They did everything together. They took us for a girls' day and took me to a tea room, someplace up here somewhere, and for lunch. And I mean, it was just always Sydney and Brenda that were together.
And I assume you guys got together for milestones, first communion, graduation,
First
things
communion,
like that?
confirmation, graduation.
Turn on. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to show you what we marked as the defendant's exhibit. Sorry. X. I know it's out of order. That was my fault. X. What is that, Ms. Brown?
That's us, I think, at her graduation, at Sydney's graduation. Is that what it is? She's got a,
So she's got the St. B colors on and the cap and gown?
yeah,
So
yeah.
who are those folks in that picture?
Her brother Andrew, my husband, Sydney, and I.
Okay, let me show you Defendant's Exhibit Y. Who are those folks?
That's Sydney and her other set of grandparents, Michelle and Ron.
Okay, and just very briefly, Defendant's Exhibit Z, this is Sydney's ID from 2020.
Yes,
And Sydney's listed at 5'1", 100 pounds. Is that what she weighed and her height around March of 2020?
yes.
Okay. What about in high school, before Sydney went to Mount Union? What kind of student was she? What kind of grades did she get, if you know?
She was an excellent student and just involved in school. She enjoyed school.
She was involved in any sports?
Soccer.
You mentioned
yeah.
soccer? Okay. And was Sydney ever in trouble in school? Any suspensions, any fights, anything like that?
No,
Was she the kind of kid that had a temper, a short fuse, would yell, argue?
no.
What kind of kid was Sydney?
Sydney was always a sweet child. She was a lot like her mother in that she was quiet spoken most of the time. We laughed and so forth, but she was a worrier, a little bit of a worrier, and but child worrier type things, like worrying about overrunning a bucket in the barn or something. But other than that, she was always sweet and kind. They also spent a lot of time doing puzzles together, and quiet time that they spent together.
Did you ever see or hear about Sydney and Brenda fighting or arguing or talking disrespectful to each other?
No, never.
So let's talk for a second about March 3rd of 2020. Did you hear from Brenda that morning?
Yes, I did.
Can you describe that?
Yes, I had a phone call from Brenda while she was on her way to work. And I thank God I picked up the phone, that was with the phone. But she just chatted a little bit about Sydney coming home and the plans over the break, that they were planning to go shopping. And we talked a little bit about whether I could meet them part way and go too. And then that was it. She had to run into work, so.
Okay. So I think we heard that I think spring break was coming up for Mount Union.
Yes.
Was Brenda mad at Sydney? Was she upset?
No.
Was she looking
No.
forward to her coming home?
Yes.
Okay. And you were present at the hospital, I believe, when Sydney was at Akron City Hospital. Detective Bertina King was there. Do you recall that?
Yes, actually, I was at the hospital much earlier than that, and they told me that she was not there.
Okay.
Then eventually, it seemed like forever, Steve called and told us to go to a different hospital. So we all piled in the car, and his brother drove us over to the other hospital, which was apparently where Brenda was.
Okay.
They refused to let me see her at all, and still weren't giving out any information. But after we were there for a while, they sent us back over to the original hospital. And I'm sorry, I can't give you the names
That's
of
okay.
which
That's
is
all right.
which right now. But it turns out Sydney was at the hospital where they had us waiting all afternoon, and the detective lady met us in the lobby then, and I knew when she took us to a room instead of up to see Sydney that this wasn't going to end well.
Yeah.
So she spent the first few minutes getting her little recording device on.
Well, let me stop you there before we get into what Detective King said. That's okay. I think what I was trying to get at, and I apologize, is Sydney was released from the hospital, and then she was taken to the Summit County Jail and charged with Brenda's murder. You remember that?
Yes, and I don't know exactly when that took place.
Okay, that's fine. What I was trying to get to is within a day or two, Sydney's bond was posted.
Yes.
Is that a decision that you and the family supported?
Absolutely.
Okay. And Sydney was released from the Summit County Jail and I think went to the Akron General Medical Center Psychiatric Hospital.
Yes.
And I think we heard she was there from March 7th through March 16th. Does that
Correct.
sound about?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And you were aware, or were you aware of a diagnosis that Sydney had when she came out of Akron General Medical Center?
Yes.
What was it?
Schizophrenia.
Okay.
And there were some other, I think, things to be checked out.
Okay. And the decision was made to have Sydney stay with you after she was released.
Yes.
Why was that?
Well, first of all, Sydney was still, I think, very shocky and upset. Of course, I was still grieving. I felt all along that my Sydney couldn't have been in her right.
We understand. Just let me ask you this.
Anyways, we did it
That's
to
okay.
take Sydney to my home where I would be with her all the time.
Okay, and let me try to help a little bit. You weren't working at that time?
No,
Yeah, and was Bob working?
no.
Okay. Describe your house for the jury, if you could. What is your home like?
We live on a farm. We've got over 100 acres. And so we kind of sit back by ourselves. It's a nice home. It's over 100 years old, but it's quiet. And I have animals, which Sydney has quite an affinity to. And I just felt it would be a good environment for her.
Okay. And you knew that Sydney was supposed to take some medication when she got out of Akron General Medical Center. You
Yes.
aware of that? Okay.
Yes.
When Sydney first got out, was she taking her medication?
Yes.
Can you describe, if you noticed, what effect did the medication have on Sydney in the beginning, for the first few months?
I felt that she was still a bit, I don't know how to describe it, maybe glazed over a little bit. She took it like clockwork, but I felt that it was dragging her down a little bit until she adapted to it.
So was there a routine where Sydney would take her medication at the same time or same day?
She takes it at the same time every single day.
And did there come a time where you noticed any improvement in Sydney's kind of demeanor, her attitude, her personality, her thinking, her process, any of that?
Yes, her processing was improving. She started to have more facial expression and a little bit more shine to her eyes, where she didn't seem so out of it all the time. It wasn't that she was out of it. I don't want to overspeak that, but she just had more of a glow to her. You could tell she was starting to feel better. She talked a little more. She was improving. It was obvious to me that she was improving.
Okay. And Sydney had a counselor during this whole time?
Yes.
And was she compliant? Was she seeing her counselor as well?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Were there times where Sydney would experience some breakthrough symptoms?
She did have an episode, apparently, where she felt that she was having some symptoms again, and she reported it immediately to her therapist, and was advised to, I don't know if the therapist called the doctor or if Sydney called the doctor right now. But the psychiatrist was notified immediately, and he changed her medication. And that made a huge difference after that. She reported to me that her symptoms were settling down again. She wasn't hearing so many noises. And I could just tell a whole difference in her demeanor at that point, where she really was starting to be Sydney again.
Okay. So Sydney has spent just about every day with you since March 16, 2022.
Yes.
Do you think she's faking a serious mental illness? Okay. Is she responding to changes in the medication?
Yes.
So we were coming up to this trial date, and did you have any conversations with the therapist or the psychiatrist about how Sydney might try to deal with the stress of a trial?
Yes.
And what was done, if anything, that you know of?
He did make another adjustment on a temporary basis to help her with anxiety.
And that's her psychiatrist?
Yes, the psychiatrist.
Do you know his name by chance?
Yes, Dr. Smartnick.
Been her psychiatrist since
From the beginning,
from the very
yes.
beginning. Okay. So let me try to ask the question we've heard from Mr. Stano many times. I know you're not a psychologist, but have you seen signs and symptoms of mental health issues with Sydney?
Yes.
And you know Sydney, you know Brenda. Do you believe, Mrs. Brown, that Sydney would kill Brenda because she was suspended from Mount Union?
Objection.
I'm going to sustain that objection as well.
Mrs. Brown, I don't have any further questions.
Okay.
There might be some, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Hang
hold
on
on.
one second.
Hold
Yeah,
on.
there might be some from the
Prosecutor may
prosecutor.
have some questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right. Mr. Magley's cross-examination.
Yes, good morning, Ms. Brown.
Good morning.
My name is Joe McAleese. I know you've been here most of trial and you've seen me ask some questions to other witnesses. And I promise, sir, I can tell you I just have a few questions, but like I've said to other witnesses, if I ask something that you don't understand or you need clarifying, you just let me know, okay? I want to first talk about Brenda. We've heard from her coworkers, we've heard from you, we've heard from Mr. Powell. Brenda was very good at her job, would you agree?
Yes.
She found a career that fit her calling very, very well.
Yes.
And that calling was working directly with children who are undergoing severe medical issues.
Yes.
Okay. And you knowing Brenda and her opening enough to talk to you about work and on those Christmas Eves that she thought it was important, she recognized some of the struggles that these children were going through.
Yes.
Their anxiety, their depression.
Yes.
And you also mentioned that at some point on March 3rd that Brenda called you that morning.
Yes.
And she was talking about, hey, spring break's coming, Sydney's going to come home, we're going to go shopping. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you were invited to that.
Yes.
During that conversation, Brenda, she didn't know that Sydney was unenrolled at Mount Union.
I'm sorry, what?
Brenda didn't know that Sydney was unenrolled?
I don't believe she did, no.
Okay. And Brenda didn't know that Ms. Powell, that Sydney was on probation a year ago, that she was struggling with those grades?
She didn't seem to know that, but she did know that something was going on with Sydney.
And you mentioned that at some point, this is I'm guessing 12 or 13 days after March 3rd, after the murder took place, that Miss Powell was able to leave the hospital and leave the jail. And you supported that bond
Absolutely.
decision. Okay, and immediately Miss Powell is living with you.
Yes.
Okay. And you stated that after her release from the hospital, she started to take medication. But that medication originally was having a pretty strong effect on her?
The
She seemed-
the
go ahead.
medication that she was taking originally is what was prescribed at her discharge from the hospital.
Okay. And you told, sorry, real quick.
go
You
ahead.
told Attorney Malarczyk that she seemed a little down while she was on it, a little withdrawn.
Yes, I guess that would work for the
And then they were able to change her medication in order to better help her so she had more life to her. Is that correct? You said sparkle in her eye or something?
I think some of it was getting her body to adjust, and some of it was after she went to Dr. Smartnick. He added and subtracted and did what he needed to do to get her on the right dosages.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brown. And Ms. Brown, you've been here most of the trial, that's correct? You
Yes,
sat here with Sydney's family.
yes,
You love Miss Sydney Powell, is that correct?
well, yes, I do,
Yeah. Since the moment she was released from the hospital, she's been with you.
yes,
She's been at your 100-acre farm. She's had access to the horses and the dogs that are there at the house.
yes,
She's worked for you there at the farm,
yes.
and she's engaged. You take her to her appointments.
Her appointments she handles, her doctor appointments she handles on her own.
Okay, but originally you've been with her since March
Right.
16th through, even March 3rd you were there looking for her at the hospital.
Right,
So there's absolutely no doubt that you love Miss Sydney Powell.
that's correct.
Your Honor, at this time, we have no further questions for Ms. Brown.
All right, Mr. Malarczyk, redirect.
No, Your Honor, thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Brown. You can step down.